Nobody ignores a man they cannot afford to lose. Think about that sentence, not as a feeling, as a fact. Think about the people in your life, at work, in relationships, in every room you've ever walked into, and ask yourself honestly, are you someone they cannot afford to lose? Or are you someone they can replace by next Thursday without losing sleep? Because here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody says out loud. Most people are invisible, not because the world is unfair, not because they weren't given the right opportunities, not because the system is rigged against them, though sometimes it is. Most people are invisible because they have not made themselves impossible to overlook. They have spent their lives waiting to be discovered instead of spending their lives becoming undeniable. Machiavelli understood this 5 centuries before the self-help industry invented a softer way to say nothing. He understood that value is not assigned. It is built deliberately, patiently, in the years when no one is watching, by men who decided that waiting for recognition was a strategy for dying unknown. This video is about that building. It is about the specific mechanical process by which a man stops being someone others can ignore and becomes someone others cannot stop thinking about. Not through manipulation, not through performance, not through the shallow game of appearances that fills most conversations about status and success, through the accumulation of real, irreplaceable value in your skills, in your character, in the way you move through the world. If you have ever sat in a room and felt invisible, this is the video that explains why. And more importantly, this is the video that tells you exactly what to do about it. Before we go deeper, type this in the comments. I am becoming someone impossible to ignore. Number 1, the invisible man and why he stays that way. Picture a specific man. He shows up every day, on time. He does his work reasonably well. He is pleasant enough to be around. He does not cause problems. He follows the rules. He waits for his turn. He does what is asked and occasionally a little more. He has been in the same room, the same job, the same social circle, the same relationship dynamic for years. And he is, for all practical purposes, invisible, not hated, not resented, not pushed down, simply not seen. He is the man people forget is there until they need something specific from him. He is the name that doesn't come up in conversations about who should be promoted, who should lead, who should be brought into the important room. He exists in the peripheral vision of every social and professional environment he inhabits, always present, never central. And the tragedy is not that the world is indifferent to him. The tragedy is that he has given the world no particular reason to pay attention. This is the first principle Machiavelli forces you to confront, and it is brutal in its clarity. Value is not a feeling. It is not about self-worth in the therapeutic sense, the internal, private relationship you have with your own dignity. Value in the world Machiavelli was describing and the world you are living in is functional. It is about what you bring to a situation that someone else cannot easily bring. It is about the gap between the version of events with you in them and the version without you. If that gap is small, you are replaceable, and replaceable people are, by definition, optional. The invisible man makes himself optional, not through malice or laziness, but through a specific failure of strategy. He confuses presence with value. He believes that showing up consistently, being reliable, being pleasant is sufficient to make himself indispensable. And in a world where those qualities were rare, perhaps it would be. But they are not rare. They are the minimum. They are the floor, not the ceiling. And a man who operates at the floor and expects to be treated like the ceiling is a man who is going to be perpetually confused by his own irrelevance. Machiavelli wrote that men in general judge more by their eyes than by their hands. They see what you appear to be more readily than they feel what you are. This is not cynicism. This is observation, and the practical implication is sharp. It is not enough to be valuable in ways that are invisible. Value must be demonstrated, must be legible, must be felt in the room. The invisible man works hard in private and presents nothing in public. He accumulates skills that no one knows he has. He develops capabilities that go undeployed. He keeps his cards so close to his chest that eventually people stop wondering what cards he holds. The man worth paying attention to does the opposite. He builds real value, and then he makes that value visible. Not through bragging, not through performance, but through application. He deploys what he has built in situations where it changes the outcome. And people notice changed outcomes, even when they don't fully understand what caused them. That noticing is the beginning of indispensability. Drop this in the comments. I am done being optional. Number 2, the architecture of real value. Before you can make yourself impossible to ignore, you have to understand what value actually is, because most people have been sold a false version. The false version says that value is about being impressive, about credentials, about the title on your business card, the school on your resume, the car in your driveway, about the things you can display in a conversation to elevate your perceived status. This version is not entirely useless. Appearances matter. Machiavelli was clear about this. But appearances without substance are a structure built on sand. They impress in the short term and collapse at the first real test, and the first real test always comes. Real value is built on 3 foundations. Each one is necessary. None of them alone is sufficient. The first foundation is competence. Competence is the ability to produce outcomes that other people cannot telegraph or cannot produce as well, or cannot produce as consistently. It is the rarest and most durable form of value because it cannot be faked indefinitely. You can fake credentials, you can fake confidence, you can fake social status for surprisingly long periods in the right environments. You cannot fake the ability to solve a problem that nobody else in the room can solve. Competence begins with a specific decision that most people never make cleanly. The decision to become genuinely excellent at something. Not reasonably good, not above average, genuinely excellent. The kind of excellent that takes years, that requires the willingness to be bad for long enough to eventually be undeniable. Most people spread themselves across many things at the level of competence that gets them by. They are a 6 in 10 areas. The man who decides to become a 9 or a 10 in one area has made himself structurally different from the field, because 9s and 10s are rare. And rare things are, by definition, difficult to replace. Machiavelli observed that princes who relied on the excellence of their own abilities, their own virtue, were far more stable in their position than those who relied on fortune, on circumstance, on the goodwill of others. Because fortune changes, circumstance shifts, goodwill evaporates. But developed ability travels with you into every room, survives every change of environment, and cannot be taken by someone else's politics. Your competence is the one thing about your value that is entirely within your control. Build it accordingly. The second foundation is reliability. Reliability is not about being nice. It is not about being easy to work with, though that is a side effect. Reliability is about the gap between what you say you will do and what you actually do, measured over time. Most people have a gap. They say they will deliver by Friday and deliver by Monday. They say they will handle something and handle it partially. They say they will be somewhere and arrive 15 minutes late with an excuse that is technically true and functionally irrelevant. These gaps are individually small. Collectively, they are enormous, because reliability is a reputation that is built in the accumulation of small moments. And once the accumulation goes in the wrong direction, the reputation calcifies into something that is very difficult to reverse. The man of reliable character, the one whose word is indistinguishable from outcome, becomes valuable in a specific and powerful way. He removes uncertainty from situations. And uncertainty is expensive. Every organization, every relationship, every social system runs on a budget of trust. And the person who can be trusted completely to do exactly what he said he would do is contributing something that has enormous practical value, regardless of how unglamorous that sounds. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must keep faith when such observance turns against him. He was writing about political survival. The principle applies at every scale. The man who keeps his word when keeping it is inconvenient, when breaking it would be easier and perhaps undetected, is building a form of character capital that compounds over years into something formidable. Reliable men are not exciting. They are indispensable. And indispensable is more durable than exciting by a very wide margin. The third foundation is presence. Presence is the most misunderstood of the three because it is the most easily confused with performance. Presence is not charisma in the theatrical sense. It is not the ability to fill a room with noise. It is not the social skill of making everyone feel immediately comfortable. Presence. Presence is the quality of being fully in a situation, of bringing your complete attention to the person in front of you, to the problem at hand, to the moment as it is, rather than the moment as you are performing it. It is the quality that makes people feel, after a conversation with you, that something real happened, that they were actually seen, that the exchange had weight. Men with strong presence are rare because full attention is rare. Most people are partially elsewhere. Their attention leaks into their phone, into their anxiety about how they are being perceived, into the conversation they are preparing to have, rather than the one they are currently in. The man who is fully present in every interaction creates over time an impression that is difficult to shake and difficult to replace. He is the person people want to talk to, not because he is the most entertaining, but because he makes the conversation matter. And conversations that matter are the conversations people remember. And remembered interactions are the currency of influence. These three foundations, competence, reliability, presence, are not independent. They compound. The man who is excellent at his craft and can be trusted absolutely to deliver it and is fully engaged in every interaction he has is not 3 times more valuable than the average man. He is an order of magnitude more valuable, because the combination is what is truly rare and rarity is what commands attention. Number 3. The silent war of positioning understanding value is the theory. Positioning is the practice. Positioning is the art of being in the right places at the right times with the right capabilities visible, so that when opportunity moves through the room, it finds you rather than passing you by in favor of someone who was simply better positioned. This is where Machiavelli becomes specifically useful, because he was one of the most precise thinkers who ever lived about the relationship between ability and context. He understood that a man's value is never absolute. It is always relative to the situation he is in. A brilliant military strategist is worth nothing to a merchant. A masterful diplomat is irrelevant on a battlefield. Value is not what you have. It is what you have in relation to what is needed. The invisible man fails at positioning in a specific way. He develops his value in contexts where it is already abundant and then expects to be recognized. He becomes competent at the things everyone around him is competent at, and then wonders why he is treated as interchangeable. The man who wants to be impossible to ignore asks a different question. Not, how do I become better than everyone here, but where can what I have become rare? This is the strategic move that changes everything. It is not about deception or manipulation. It is about alignment, putting yourself in environments where your specific capabilities are genuinely needed, genuinely scarce, and genuinely impactful. Machiavelli observed that men of virtue, men of developed capacity, often find their greatest opportunity in times of disorder and uncertainty, precisely because those times demand real ability rather than the performance of ability. When everything is comfortable and the system is working smoothly, anyone can look competent. When things are difficult, when the situation requires something real, the men with genuine depth separate from the field immediately. This means seek the hard problems. Seek the situations others avoid. Seek the room where the challenge is real rather than the room where the politics are comfortable. Because the hard problems are where real value gets demonstrated. And demonstrated value is the only value that actually changes your position. There is a second dimension to positioning that is less comfortable to discuss. It involves the management of your associations. Machiavelli was direct about this in a way that makes modern sensibilities flinch. The company you keep shapes how you are perceived, and perception shapes the opportunities that find you. This is not about using people. It is about understanding that proximity is a signal. When you consistently exist in the company of people who are building something real, who are operating at a high level, who are taken seriously by the environments they move through, you are, by association, perceived as someone worth taking seriously. And perception, as Machiavelli understood, often becomes reality faster than reality becomes reality. Upgrade your associations deliberately, not by abandoning people who love you, but by adding relationships with people whose level of operation challenges you, exposes you to new contexts, and signals to your environment that you belong in rooms you may not have entered yet. Drop this in the comments. I position myself where my value cannot be ignored. Number 4, the compound interest of self-investment. Here's the mathematics that most people never run. A man who invests in himself, in his skills, his knowledge, his health, his mental clarity, his strategic understanding of the world, is not simply better than he was yesterday. He is exponentially different from who he will be in 5 years if he stops. And he is exponentially different from the man beside him who is not running the same program. This is compound interest. And it is the most powerful force available to any person who decides to use it, and the most devastating absence in the life of any person who doesn't. Machiavelli wrote that men should read history and study the actions of excellent men, not out of academic curiosity, but out of practical necessity. Because the men who shaped history were, almost universally, men who studied the men before them and extracted the lessons rather than repeating the experiments. Self-investment is not a single decision. It is a daily architecture. And the architecture has specific rooms, the room of knowledge. A man who reads seriously, consistently across history and strategy and psychology and the domains most relevant to what he is building is not simply more informed than the man who doesn't. He thinks in different patterns. He recognizes situations before they fully develop. He has mental frameworks that other people lack, which means he makes better decisions in real time, which means his outcomes are systematically better, which means over years he ends up somewhere that the man who didn't invest in knowledge cannot reach without a guide. Read Machiavelli. Read Marcus Aurelius. Read the biographies of men who built things in difficult circumstances. Read across domains, because the collision of ideas from different fields is where genuine insight lives. But read with intention. Read to extract patterns. Read to add tools to a toolkit that you actually use. The room of physical capacity. The body is not separate from the mind. It is the container the mind runs in. A man who is physically strong, who maintains his health with discipline, who treats sleep and nutrition and exercise as strategic inputs rather than optional luxuries, that man has a neurological advantage over the man who doesn't. He thinks more clearly. He manages stress more effectively. He projects a quality of physical presence that registers in rooms before he says a word. This is not vanity. This is infrastructure. The room of skill mastery. Choose the thing you are building toward. One thing. The thing that in 5 years will be so developed that the gap between you and the average person in that domain is not a step. It is a canyon. And spend deliberate time every single day moving toward it. Not vaguely, deliberately, with specific practice, specific feedback, specific resistance designed to stretch you past what you can currently do. Deliberate practice is uncomfortable. It is supposed to be uncomfortable. Comfort is the feeling of operating inside your current capacity. Deliberate practice is the feeling of operating just beyond it. That zone of productive discomfort is the only zone where the skill actually grows. The room of strategic clarity. A man who understands himself, his actual strengths, his actual weaknesses, his actual tendencies under pressure, is a man who can deploy himself effectively, who knows which situations will reveal his best capabilities and which situations will expose his gaps. Who can make decisions about where to invest his time and energy based on honest self-assessment rather than flattering self-image. This clarity is built through reflection, through the daily habit of reviewing your decisions, your responses, your outcomes, not to punish yourself, but to extract information. Every day contains data about who you are and what you are building. Most people let it pass unexamined. The man who compounds his self-investment across these rooms, day after day, year after year, becomes someone who cannot be overlooked, not because he demands attention, but because the gap between his capability and the average person's capability has grown so wide that ignoring him becomes practically difficult. You cannot ignore a man who is clearly the best at what he does. You cannot ignore a man who consistently delivers outcomes others cannot. You cannot ignore a man whose presence changes the quality of every situation he enters. You simply cannot. Number 5, the quiet power that commands rooms. Most people think influence is something you project outward. Volume, force, dominance, the loudest voice in the room, the most aggressive claim to status. Machiavelli understood something more precise. He observed that the men who commanded the deepest and most durable influence were almost never the loudest. They were the ones who created in the people around them a specific feeling. The feeling that this person sees things others don't, that engaging with him is worth the attention, that dismissing him would be a mistake. That feeling does not come from noise, it comes from demonstrated depth. Depth is communicated in specific ways through the quality of the questions you ask rather than the volume of the statements you make, through your willingness to be silent when silence communicates more than speaking, through the specificity and accuracy of your observations when you do speak, through the consistency between what you say you believe and how you actually behave. Men of depth in a room full of surface have a specific quality that is difficult to articulate but impossible to miss. They are somehow more there, more present, more solid. People unconsciously orient toward them the way a room unconsciously orients toward the person who is most comfortable with stillness. Learn to be comfortable with stillness, not the stillness of having nothing to say, but the stillness of not needing to fill every silence with the sound of your own voice. Speak when your words add something. Let silence do its work when they don't. This discipline, the discipline of not speaking for the sake of being heard, is one of the most powerful social tools available and one of the most underused. Control what you reveal, not deceptively, but strategically. A man who reveals everything about himself immediately gives the room nothing to wonder about. A man who reveals himself gradually, who has clearly thought more than he has said, who leaves others with the sense that there is more beneath the surface than has been shown. That man creates a gravitational pull that the fully disclosed man never achieves. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be a great concealer. He did not mean dishonesty. He meant restraint. The restraint to not hand your entire interior to everyone who asks. The understanding that mystery is a form of value, that not everything known is something gained, and that what you choose to keep quiet about yourself often says more about your sophistication than what you choose to share. Build this quality deliberately. Practice listening more than speaking in the next room you enter. Practice asking questions whose genuine answers you want, rather than questions designed to redirect the conversation to your own experience. Practice the discipline of offering your most valuable insight last, rather than first, and watch how it lands differently when everything before it has created the space for it to matter. Number 6. When they cannot replace you. There is a specific moment when a man crosses a threshold. It is not dramatic. There is no announcement. He does not receive a certificate or a title or a formal recognition that things have changed. The change is felt in a specific, quiet way, in the way the room adjusts slightly when he enters, in the way decisions get postponed until he has been consulted, in the way people who previously moved past him now stop and consider what he would think. He has become someone they cannot afford to ignore. This does not happen because he asked for it. It does not happen because he performed it. It happens because the accumulation of real value, real competence, real reliability, real presence, real depth has reached a level that the environment can no longer process without acknowledging him. This is the threshold you are building toward, and understanding how it works mechanically is important because it tells you what to stop doing as much as what to start doing. Stop waiting to be seen before you build. The invisible man is waiting for recognition to arrive as motivation. He will give everything when people finally understand his value, but recognition does not precede value. It follows it, and it follows slowly. The man who requires recognition first will never build the thing that earns the recognition. Stop explaining your value in words. Value, when it is real, demonstrates itself in outcomes. The man who has to tell you he is good at something is already asking you to take his word for it. The man who lets the outcomes speak gives you no choice but to see it. Show, do not tell. Deliver, do not promise. Act, do not announce. Stop competing with people who are not your real competition. Most of the status games that consume people's energy are played within small pools against people at similar levels, and winning those games produces visibility within a pool that is too small to matter. Your real competition is the version of you that exists in 5 years, the one who either compounded or didn't. Play that game instead. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. This is one of his most quoted and most misunderstood observations. What he meant was not that cruelty is preferable to warmth. What he meant was that fear, properly understood, is the feeling that follows genuine power, the recognition that this person can affect my world in ways I did not choose, while love, as he used the term, is affection without weight. And affection without weight does not produce indispensability. What creates indispensability, what makes you truly impossible to ignore, is not that people fear you in the aggressive sense. It is that they recognize clearly and practically that the version of their situation without you is materially worse, that your absence is felt, that replacing you is not a simple task of finding someone with a similar title, that recognition is earned. It is earned in the years of compounding investment. It is earned in the daily discipline of building real capabilities rather than performing the appearance of them. It is earned in the accumulation of reliable delivery, of genuine presence, of strategic positioning, of the kind of quiet depth that rooms begin to organize around. It cannot be rushed, but it also cannot be stopped in a man who commits to building it. Drop this in the comments. They cannot afford to lose me. I made sure of that. Number 7. The last thing they will ever underestimate. There will come a moment, if you do this work, when someone who once overlooked you finds themselves in the position of needing what you have built. Maybe it is a professional situation. Maybe it is social. Maybe it is a person who dismissed you, who treated you as background, who looked past you in rooms where you were standing clearly, and that person now finds themselves confronted with the gap between what they have and what they need. And the thing that fills that gap is the thing you spent the invisible years building. That moment will not feel the way movies suggest it feels. It will not feel triumphant. It will not feel like revenge, because what you have built has long since moved past the emotional territory of revenge. It will feel quiet, almost mundane, the quiet of a man who did the work and is now simply in the position the work produced. What will be notable, what will live in that person's memory long after the moment passes, is what they understand in it. They will understand, perhaps for the first time, and certainly too late to be useful to them, the distance between where they thought you were and where you actually are. They will understand that the man they overlooked was never the man they thought they saw. He was always someone else, someone building, someone compounding, someone becoming, and their failure to see it was not his failure, it was theirs. That realization is the final word in the conversation that started when they first decided you weren't worth paying attention to. You will not need to say it. The distance will say it. The position will say it. The quality of what you have built will say it in a language too clear to require translation. Machiavelli closed some of his most important observations with a version of this principle, that the prince who survives adversity and builds in silence and emerges with genuine capability, genuine character, and genuine strategic clarity eventually becomes a figure that the very people who opposed him cannot avoid. Not because he sought their acknowledgement, but because he built something that the environment is organized around. And you cannot organize around something and simultaneously pretend it isn't there. You are not building to prove something to the people who overlooked you. You are building because what you are becoming is worth becoming. For you. For the people who deserve what you have to offer. For the life that the compounding of this work eventually makes possible. But when the moment comes, and it will come, let the silence hold. Let the outcome speak. Let the years of invisible work announce themselves through the position they produced. That position is the only argument that matters, and it is the last thing they will ever underestimate. Most people go through their entire lives waiting for the world to notice them, adjusting their worth to fit the room's opinion of them, shrinking when they are overlooked, expanding when they are praised, permanently at the mercy of other people's attention. You have just been shown a different way to live. Build the value they cannot ignore. Compound it daily, in private, without requiring an audience. Position it in the places where it is genuinely rare. Demonstrate it through outcomes rather than explanations. Develop the depth that rooms feel before you speak. And let time close the gap between who you are and who the world is forced to see. Machiavelli did not write for people who wanted to be comfortable. He wrote for people who wanted to be consequential. And the path to consequential runs directly through the years of unwitnessed investment that most people refuse to take. Take them. The man you become in 5 years of this discipline will be unrecognizable to the man who watched this video today. And the man who watches this video today will be the last person who got to meet the version of you that the world could still afford to overlook. That version ends here. Type this in the comments one final time. I am building the version of me that no one can ignore. If this reached something real, like the video, share it with a man who is still waiting to be seen instead of building something worth seeing. Subscribe, because this work continues, and turn on notifications so the next lesson finds you the moment it arrives. Now close the app and go build the thing they cannot look away from.